Hey, before we get started, one thing. I did a podcast. The link's in the description below. Enjoy. Me and DC Comics have a very shaky relationship. Fact of the matter is that superhero properties are right alongside animated films and TV. When they try to be for adults, it's almost cringe-worthy to watch. I can't stand the Dark Knight trilogy because it spends too much of its time waxing poetic about chaos or the social order or I don't know, whatever else Nolan was writing while he was listening to Simple Plan and dragging a razor over his wrist. Same goes for Man of Steel. When you've 9/11'd all of Metropolis, you've trivialized death. So Superman killing General Zod just carries no weight, and once again, everyone is just too goddamn miserable. Sack that alongside The Legend of Korra, let's try and politics like the grown-ups do. And I can sure as hell tell you that Rainbow Rocks would have been significantly worse if the G rating hadn't forced these three to retain some degree of subtlety. It just seems like that when a medium aimed squarely at kids starts trying to appeal to adults, it loses everything that made it good in the first place. Almost as if both mediums are in a hurry to grow up, like a 5-year-old wearing mommy's lipstick. But there was one glorious time that they actually pulled it off. Ah, the 90s, where Warner Brothers wasn't under the assumption that adults hated fun. Lois and Clark is the perfect example of what a show about Superman should be. It was a fun detective show. That makes perfect sense, right? A superhero franchise is turned into a detective series. Small-time criminals working in the shadows with big goals, and the majority of a given episode is spent flushing them out. That's the perfect setup. It's grounded enough that it appeals to adults, but has enough of Superman to still feel like it's a show about Superman. This wasn't an adult show because it dealt with dark themes or grim tones or tried and failed to preach on a podium. It was an adult show because on the surface there was too much detective work and kissing in it. Kids would just get bored. But at its heart, it was exactly what a Superman show should be. Comedy, crime fighting, sexy men. Lois and Clark was a Superman series for your mom, and it was good because of that. Much of that was shown through the leading cast. Terry Hatcher has the best portrayal of Lois Lane ever seen.
You are not working with me, you're working for me. I call the shots, I ask the questions. You are low man, I am top banana, and that's the way I like it. Comprende?
You like to be on top. Got it.
Don't push me, Kent. You are way out of your league.
They even managed to make the whole damsel in distress thing work. Why is Lois always getting kidnapped and needing to be saved by Superman? Because she's impulsive and so desperate to get the story, she'll bull rush into danger like an idiot. On more than one occasion, Clark rolls his eyes at Lois putting herself into more danger. Starting from the 3rd season, Lois finds out that her husband is in fact Superman, and it occurs to her that this means she's effectively invulnerable. She becomes the greatest journalist in the world by virtue of not having to worry about self-preservation. But even better than Terry Hatcher was Dean Cain as Superman.
Let's see. Satellite hijacking, attempted murder, terrorism, and oh yes, speeding. I'm gonna have to ask you boys to pull over. This is not gonna look good come promotion time.
Actually, I take that back. He wasn't Superman. It was in fact the caveat of the whole series. Dean Cain played Clark, and Superman was his public persona. The show really nailed the idea that Superman was a symbol of hope by making him a literal symbol. All the real character went to Clark, and he spent the majority of his time as Clark. He jumped into the suit to save someone or to make a public appearance. The rest of the time, he was Clark. And you know what? I like Clark. He has a freaking sense of humor. He's cheeky and snide and sarcastic, and Cain was the perfect choice for that sort of role. Superman was originally originally geared towards kids, and Clark had a lot of that childlike charm to him, i.e. he was enjoyable to be around. He wasn't miserable. He took being a superhero in stride, and while the stress of being Superman was certainly there, that stress wasn't a constant, unbearable presence. More to it, as it turns out, being Superman is hard, not just by virtue of saving people, but also keeping true to one's responsibility of being a superhero. You see, the writers are very clever with this. There's a lot of little moments where Superman either uses his powers for something inherently petty, like yanking a taxi back, or has a moment where he struggles to do the right thing with his powers, like, for example, not peeking on Lois while she's changing. That's an actual scene. Lois is changing in the next room, and for a moment, Clark is seriously considering peeking through the door with that X-ray vision, but he doesn't, and yet at the same time, it's very clear that he well wants to. And you realize that, goddammit, being a good person really sucks. That shows the stress of being Superman more than Hiroshima bombing Metropolis ever will. Actually, speaking of Clark not peeping on Lois, these two have probably the best chemistry of any on-screen couple. There's always that problem with TV romances that once the couple in question actually gets together, the whole thing falls apart. This is why Ross and Rachel were constantly breaking up on Friends. But with Lois and Clark, not so much. Actually, their relationship was at its best after they got married. This show is a shipper's dream come true, because not only do the two leading characters actually get married, they're probably the most adorable and funny married couple in TV history.
That lunatic? A guy can never be too careful?
Honey, what do you want me to say? You know, lighten up, officer. I'm married to that lunatic.
Well, even if I am a lunatic, I'm still your lunatic.
You know, that's what I think, honey.
I have no trouble believing that these two are going to be married for a very long time. And also, these two are fire rose levels of adorable. It's actually really hard to describe how great this show actually was in the confinements of Glass of Water, but trust me when I say that it's one of the best shows ever made. If this show aired today, Tumblr would be all over it. I've heard some people say that Kane is too campy as Superman. To that I say, he's Superman. He wears red underpants on the outside of blue tights. He's supposed to be campy. It was a series that embraced being a comic book, and these days they're ashamed to even be called comic books. And as it turns out, it's actually very easy to make superheroes appeal to adults. You just had to be fun and not condescend to the audience by trying to be baby's first philosophy lesson. If you can find this show on DVD, I strongly suggest you give it a watch. And because I know you're going to ask, my top 10 favorite episodes are Dead Lois Walking, Chip Off the Old Clark, Pheromone My Lovely, Smart Kids, Season's Greetings, Tempest Fugitive, Ultra Woman, Honeymoon in Metropolis, The Man of Steel Bars, and Home is Where the Hurt Is. See you next time!